Hello, fellow DIY party people. Sliders everywhere. Here's a whole slew of sliders. Say that 3 times real fast. Today we're going to discuss installing sliders in depth. We'll look at measuring height, measuring for a correct parallel, and making sure that they work correctly. Yes, working kitchen cabinet, even while it's under construction, so excuse the kitchen utensils in it. I've got a 2x4 towards the back of this cabinet. That is so I can mount the slider an even distance away from the side of the cabinet, front and back. In other words, the slider needs to be mounted a certain distance from the cabinet side in the front, so I need that distance to be equal in the back. So I'm using a 2x4, and you can see why right here. The 2x4 is exactly the width I need. It's almost exactly the width of the face frame out from the side of the cabinet. So we're going to mount a 2x4 in the back. Same thing with the left side here. And I just used angle irons to fix the 2x4s in place. I used a single 2.5-inch wood screw on either side to really lock those 2x4s in place. Now we want to measure up from the bottom of the cabinet to the bottom of where we want the slider to be. So where you see that pencil mark, it's roughly 2.5 inches. Your mileage may vary. That's where we want the bottom of the slider to rest. Now you can measure the back portion or the back piece of 2x4 if you want, but using scrap wood will help a lot in determining a nice even height for the slider. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to use scrap pieces to confirm the height. Alright, so we're going to rest a 1x3 piece of scrap alongside or on top of a shim, and it's just a little over where the pencil mark is. That's okay. We want a little more height. So let's rest the slider on the right hand side of this cabinet, and it's looking good. It's going to be parallel. It's going to be the right distance out front and back. As you can see, we've got it resting against the 2x4 in the back. So now we can get ready to fix the right hand slider in place. Also, I've got a view here of the left hand side slider, and as you can see, I'm using the same pieces of scrap to measure the height for the left hand side. We've got a little shim on the bottom. We've got a 1x3 on top of it. And also, you want to make sure you pull the sliders apart. You want to remove the piece that's going to be mounted against the actual drawer. Take that out. There's usually a little plastic clip you push down or push up on to remove it. And here's the other slider. So you want to just remove that bracket, and then it's going to be a lot easier to mount your slider. So just a little extra step there. Okay, so in this view I have the sliders mounted in place. Now I'm going to use a 1/2-inch piece of scrap plywood to rest the drawer on top of. So I'm going to take this piece of scrap that you're looking at right there, and I'm just going to rest it on the bottom floor of the cabinet with about half of it sticking out, because what I want to do is I want to balance the drawer on top of it. That way I've got enough gap between the face frame at the bottom and the bottom of the drawer. So I'll rest the plywood there, put the drawer on top of it, and then I can get ready to mount the drawer on top of the scrap. Here's a view of the drawer, not yet fixed in place. I want to measure it, in this case, 8 inches from the top of the drawer to the top of the bracket. Again, your mileage may vary, but what I want to do is I want to place the middle screw in first after I've slid the drawer in between the brackets on either side. So I want to make sure it's kind of balanced, and then I'll zip the first screw in, and then I'll remove the drawer and verify that the bracket is straight or parallel alongside the bottom, because I don't want the drawer to be cockeyed, obviously. This particular installation is a challenge because on the right hand side of the drawer I don't have a lot of room to access the bracket. So what I needed to do was install a screw for the left hand side bracket and then make markings, and I used my daughter's hot pink crayon here so I could really see the markings, and I just used this crayon and kind of like went through the holes of the bracket on the right hand side. That way I was able to remove the drawer after making those markings so I could drill the bracket in place. Here's a view of that right hand side slider, the one I was just talking about, with the bracket in place within the slider. And this is right before I put the drawer in so that I can mark with those crayon marks that I was referring to. All right, as I mentioned earlier, hot pink crayons, they're the way to go for high visibility, and they're very pretty. In this shot, I used a shim on this particular slider to make sure that this slider was nice and parallel with its mate on the other side. So just be aware, sometimes you might need to use a shim. It's just the nature of the beast. So put your shim in there, test everything out. Once you're done, make sure that the sliders are nice and parallel and that the drawer operates nicely. I would recommend a little bit of WD-40 in each slider, and you should be good to go. There's an inside shot, and you want to make sure that when your drawer is closed, it's flush, the front of it is flush with the face frame. And then you can mount the face frame plate on the front. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe. I also have some other cabinet build videos. Thanks for watching.